Hello and welcome to FML Fund My Life, a podcast brought to you by MyWallSt. Today we have a very special interview with Niamh Kelly and Lisa Coolan from Tara Financial Partners, which is a financial planning firm that provides expert advice to individuals and companies in areas such as retirement planning, wealth management, succession planning, and business and family protection. So hi Emery, how are you today and how did you find the interview?
Hi, Nicole. I am good. I actually really enjoyed the interview because I don't know all that much about kind of Irish pension schemes and that sort of thing because I'm very used to like the Roth IRA or the 401k that we have in the US. So that
Yeah.
was nice to hear. I suppose we should say that this is financial planning from an Irish perspective. They're kind of naming specific products available to Irish people in Ireland. But I think a lot of the lessons they say are pretty applicable to really anywhere in the world. So I guess something to take away from this if you're not in Ireland, sad days for you, is that maybe reach out to a financial planner kind of like within your own country and speak to them about what options are available for you. This is kind of, I suppose, like our most technical getting started podcast where we're really providing like names of things and people to contact and things to research.
Yeah. So if you are feeling inspired to get help with your own financial planning and you are Irish, you can head on over to Tara Financial's website at www.tarafinancial.ie.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then, so some of the stats I was actually looking at, like in retirement and those kind of things, I think we did mention on the first podcast, but there's no harm in saying it again,
Yeah.
that retirement plan is really important for women because
Mm-hmm.
studies actually show that we save 40% less for retirement compared to men, which is massive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually asked kind of specific questions around that in the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really interesting hearing their answers, kind of just discussing about how women, in terms of their career life and their financial life, that often means that it's just a more kind of nuanced discussion because you're trying to maybe cover up for a bunch of different factors, things like the wage gap, but then also like the idea of what if you want to take off an extended period of time to raise children, or what if you want to take off time, to take care of your parents as they get older or something like that. And it was really interesting hearing them say, oh, like a financial planner can help you cover for those possibilities or those opportunities down the line. And so I really liked that. And the two women we spoke to had a real focus on like trying to bring in female clients and helping them kind of prepare for the future and bring a bit more equality to the financial space. So that was always good to hear.
Yeah. And again, I think it's important because most people don't really start their pension planning until they're in their 30s. And I think it was Niamh that shared a really interesting stat about how much less you could have compared to if you started in your 20s. So it is really, really important to kind of get that going as soon as possible. It's kind of like investing in the stock market as well. The difference between 5 to 10 years can be massive.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I think in Ireland as well, like people retire with a pension of approximately 90,000 euros. And I remember reading a few articles about it, and most people are really surprised by, that's not enough. That's not how much they wanted to. So do you kind of see like pension and alongside stock investing as kind of the golden key for retirement? So, we can all go to Florida or Spain, wherever you are.
Yeah, I guess so. I think in the US they're kind of like more closely together. So what we would use is like a 401k, something that's provided by your employer, and then a Roth IRA is something that you can just open on your own. But you can like invest in individual stocks within that, and it's like technically a retirement account, but then also one that you kind of get to actively participate in. You seem to not have that option as much in Ireland, which is a bummer. It seems to be very kind of state managed, and it means that your kind of returns can be sort of minimal in the early years, and that's quite frustrating to young people because they're kind of like, why am I contributing to this if I'm not getting great returns up front? And so I think particularly in the case of like Ireland and the UK, it seems to be that when you're young, you kind of maybe want to have a bit of a balancing act. Start your pension and then maybe take a bit of their other money that's going into savings and have a little investment account kind of on the side, so you can maybe max out some of those returns by purchasing individual stocks or index funds.
Yes, kind of if anything, maybe individual stock investing should be more popular in England and Ireland and the rest of Europe, kind of.
Yeah, to kind of make up for, I think, the frustration that young people seem to have. I read a really interesting study, I think in the Financial Times, and they had gone to speak to people in their 20s and 30s, and I believe they were Swiss and German, and they were talking to them about contributing to their equivalent of the pension, and a lot of them talked about how they were frustrated because they would get very minimal returns in those early years, and it encouraged them to go out on their own and look for their own financial options and take better control of their financial future. So it does seem to be a balancing act where it's like the pension is the safe haven. It's kind of the default. It's kind of the end of the day. That's, the one you want to be contributing to, but there's no reason you can't do both.
Yeah. And also if your company matches your pension contributions,
that's great.
then you'd be a fool not to take advantage of that, because that
definitely.
really helps.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Anne-Marie is actually leading this interview because we thought maybe 4 people might be too much talking, too many cooks in the kitchen. And I've actually listened back to a few of our episodes, and we're devils for talking over each other. So we'll get better at that, guys.
Yeah. The issue is that the streamer that we use to record these has just the tiniest of micro delays. It's like maybe half a second. So it means that if you stop to pause, I think you're done talking. So I'm like, oh, perfect. I jump in now. And then I end up, you've just stopped to take a breath. And I'm like, now is the time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I think I can be forgiving because, I'm the new podcast kid on the block. You're, Stock Club resident now.
Yeah, I get interrupted on Stock Club all the time because I'm always like presenting a topic and I have like a big list of things I want to get out. And James sometimes has to stop me to like ask another question. And I'm like, I'm not done with my full 5-minute presentation yet. Sit down.
Yeah. So without further ado, here's the interview with Anne-Marie and Tara Financial Planners. Hope you enjoy.
So I want to give a warm welcome to Niamh and Lisa from Tara Financial, who are joining us today to answer a few questions. Niamh and Lisa, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming on FML. I don't know what episode this is going to be. It's either 3 or 4, but we'll see. We'll find out after the fact. All right. So I think we'll start off just very easy. I would like you guys to explain exactly what financial planning is for anyone who's a complete newbie or a novice, and what does your typical day look like in the office or from home? To be fair, Niamh is at home today.
Sometimes we like to mix it up that way.
Fair enough.
So I'll take this question. So financial planning kind of, I suppose, it looks at the client's overall financial situation, their needs and goals, and we basically build a tailored financial life plan essentially around that. So in plain English, what this actually means is that we sit down, listen to the clients, what their motivations are, what fears they have, I suppose where they are now, where they'd like to get to, and we help basically build a plan and strategy to help them get to where they want to be. So I'm sure you can appreciate that each client obviously has their own individual goals, their ideas of what retirement, let's say, might look for them. And we kind of help them carve their own path, essentially, by just trying to keep the journey simple, break it down for them so that they can actually make informed decisions along the way, really. We don't want to just advise clients on a once-off and off they go. We very much want to build a relationship with them, go on the journey with them as they go through the different life stages, and trust that, I suppose, we're in their corner and we have their best interests at heart. And I'm sure as well, Anne-Marie, it's probably similar to the area you work in. A lot of people kind of assume that you need to be wealthy to have a financial plan. And that's absolutely just not the case. A good plan will educate you and prepare you for each stage of your life. So if you think about it, right, if you had to stop working tomorrow because you became sick, where does your income come from? An income protection policy would be the answer there. We help plan for these scenarios, funding a pension so that you can spend your retirement whatever way you want to, saving and investing for your children's education. And as bleak as it may sound, if you were to die in the morning, how would your family or your loved ones survive? Would they struggle? Would they have to change their lifestyle and goals? So I suppose essentially what I'm trying to say is everyone has something to protect or to plan for. So it's not just for the wealthy, is what we're trying to say. Everybody has an element that they can protect or plan for. And then I suppose coming back to the second part of your question, which was a very long-winded answer there, but the second part is our day-to-day mainly, and apart from the paperwork, I don't want to bore you with that side of it. We all know how that goes in the financial industry. But our days are kind of mainly spent having conversations with clients, whether they're new clients or existing clients, and get out and meet them where we can, it's great now that things are opening up again that we can do that a bit more. But I suppose what I've noticed, because I'm only in the financial industry kind of the last year, I only joined I'm in the financial industry about 9 years, but not the financial planning world. It's only kind of new enough to me in the last year. Mm-hmm. So I've really noticed that I've learned so much in the year that I've been here. But even when I look at my colleagues who have been in the industry far longer than I have, they're constantly learning, constantly evolving, just so that they can stay at the top of their games for their clients. So I'd say, obviously, building relationships with new and existing clients is priority number one, but a very close second is constantly educating yourself so that you can deliver those best outcomes for the clients.
Yeah, of course. I'm just interested, you talked there a little bit about retirement, but then other financial goals. Is the most common financial goal that you see for people retirement? Like, is that kind of, when you see people walk in the door, you kind of assume they're probably coming to set up a baseline retirement account or something like that?
Yeah, like a lot of them would. Like a lot of people would kind of say, right, well, I better plan for the retirement. A lot of them probably, they don't, like, for protection, it's kind of, they nearly see it as a nice to have, whereas we kind of view it as a necessity, especially like income protection. But again, a lot of them, you're right, a lot of them will come through with a plan for retirement. Now, there's obviously, people that come in and they want to grow their wealth as well through other means other than just retirement. But I would say the majority of clients that come in, that's kind of their main goal.
Okay. Well, I guess kind of on that idea, if we're walking through the door and someone wants to take their first step to control their finances, what do you think that first step should be? What's kind of the most common recommendation that you guys start off with?
Yeah, like, I suppose, this is going to sound so cliche, but I kind of would say, like, reach out to a financial advisor. Like, the research there's been so much research on this, and it's shown that, those who have used a financial advisor or had them in their corner for like 15 plus years, they have gathered or accumulated 2.7 times more wealth than those who haven't. So that's significant.
Yeah.
But, that's all grand, and it's easy for me to say that, but I kind of like to say, think of a financial advisor as like your PT. We're there to hold you accountable to your plan so that you can meet your goals. So I suppose there's no quick win here, really. Like, what a good financial advisor should do is sit down with you, have a chat, figure out, I suppose, what your goals are, where do you want to get to, and we'll kind of work backwards from there, really, because, you need to have a goal in mind. Otherwise, like, where are you going? Do you know, that kind of way? So fair. I suppose, for example, if someone was like in retirement and they were like, I want to buy a holiday home in Spain and move there. So that's their goal. We can help, I suppose, that can help by them telling us what their goal is. That can help us determine what size pension pot they should be aiming to get. And for us, I suppose, for us to be able to determine what size pot they need, we can then break it down even further and say, well, this is how much you need to put in now to get that size pension pot so that you can fund your future lifestyle. And we try to kind of, like, obviously there's going to be challenges that come up along the way that might throw you off your path to meeting that goal, but we try where we can, again, to try and mitigate some of that. So, for example, again, if you got sick and you lost your job, you've no income to fund for your pension. If you have an income protection policy in place, you still have an income, you can still fund your pension, you still get to the end goal. So that's essentially kind of what we help do. So, like, I know it is cliche, but I do really think that there's an awful lot of benefit in, and there's the research to back up, reaching out to a financial advisor just to help keep you accountable and, I suppose, on the right track to meeting those goals.
Yeah, it's actually quite similar to the advice that we give to young people who might be in their 20s who are interested in investing. And they're like, oh, what's the first step? And it's like, well, the first step is to start. Like, the first step is to kind of reach out and start reading and educating yourselves and reach out to, like, trusted advisors and people that that you can speak to about the topic, which is very similar. And we're kind of, as the podcast, we're trying to kind of target young people, trying to target women, like people who maybe are not as kind of included in the financial landscape, but we're lucky enough to kind of have a diverse audience at this point. So I'm interested to know, what financial advice would you give people in kind of each decade of their working life, maybe starting with young people, 20s, early 30s, and then kind of going into the middle of your life and then approaching maybe closer to your retirement age?
Yeah, that's it. Look, it's a really interesting question because I suppose there's no one size fits all. But generally people in their 20s and 30s, as I'm sure we can all appreciate, are at a very expensive stage of their lives. So, you know, outgoings tend to be much higher, and you're focused on having fun and not thinking about your retirement and things like that. And then as people reach their 40s, 50s, 60s, they might start in, you know, asking those questions. What happens if I retire? Does my employer offer a pension fund, etc.? So I think Lisa's kind of already alluded to this, we really try and focus on people's goals. So someone in their 20s might tell us, look, I'm looking to save for a mortgage. And that's really important. And there's no point us going on and on about a pension if that's what someone's goal is. So then if they have those shorter term goals, well, how do we help you meet that? So creating a savings plan with your after tax income to help you fund for your mortgage. And it really helps us to know when you plan on actually doing that mortgage, and then we can adjust the risk of the investment accordingly. Or someone in their 40s who's saving for a pension, you know, they have a much longer time to save, and they should avail of tax reliefs that are available in Ireland for that. So it does change throughout people's life cycle, and the financial plan should change. It should evolve with the person, because I could sit here and say to you, yeah, I'm going to retire at 60. That's a lovely goal. And I might get to 55 and think, I actually don't want to retire until I'm 65. Or I might get to 55 and go, you know what, I've had enough. So Lisa's already mentioned this, but we really just want to stay on the journey and make sure we can adjust the plan as people's needs change. I think Albert Einstein apparently said that the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. So the younger you can start, the better for sure in terms of being able to generate the interest. But likewise, it's never too late or too early to start with a financial planner, really.
Maybe kind of building off what I previously mentioned, that as the podcast, we're trying to maybe target women, bring women into this conversation, encourage them to take an interest in their finances. So I'm wondering, do you see financial planning as being particularly important for women, especially considering issues like the wage gap, or maybe, you know, there's less family supports and those type of things? And do you guys, I guess, in your jobs, maybe specifically target women, or are you interested in bringing more female clients in? Or are there any kind of maybe specific advice you maybe say to women, maybe over men or something like that?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, and it's something that's super close to both mine and Lisa's hearts. It's something that I've really tried to focus on in Tower Financial since I joined them 7 years ago this year. So we do focus on female clients in particular, because I think, like you've said there, it's absolutely correct. There is a gender pay gap, and as well as that, you know, women do tend to live longer than men. And often, you know, if people do decide to have children, the female might take time out of work to take care of the children. What does that all mean? Well, that means women need to pedal a lot harder for their pension fund, because if we're going to live longer, you need enough money in there to fund for your retirement. And if you're going to be taking time off work, we really want to help you understand, you know, does your employer pay into your pension while you're on maternity leave? You know, do you get PRSI contributions? Do the state pension add up when you're on maternity leave? Things like that, I think, are questions that all too often get maybe pushed to the back of females' minds. I think probably commonly women are quite lateral thinkers, you know, so we have a lot going on at the one time, and we're often too busy to think of ourselves. So, you know, you're busy running the household, or trying to work maybe in a male-dominated industry like finances, and it can all be really intimidating. So something we really focus on to help, I think, and why we have a lot of female clients and female business owners as our clients, is that we really try and educate people and take out the jargon in their industry, so it's not as intimidating. And we do have actually majority female staff in our company at the moment as well. So I think it's been great for brainstorming and being able to work with our clients to account for those things, you know, because females' financial needs they're just different. And another thing as well, I think a lot of women do tend to focus on maybe ethical investing a bit more. That's what we find is the question that comes up a lot more with females. So I think one thing that's really important, and what I would encourage a lot of women to do, is if you're married or in a partnership, go along to those meetings, whether it's with your solicitor, your accountant, your partner's financial planner. Go to the meeting if it's joint things, and make sure you know the answer to questions like, you know, I'm working in the home taking care of our family. What happens if my husband is unable to work due to illness? Or what happens if I take maternity leave? All these questions. Go to the meetings, ask the questions. There really is no such thing as a stupid question. And I think it'll really benefit you in the long term.
So it's kind of encouraging women to have that active role, and kind of make sure that they understand things to the fullest ability and really planning for their future and all the kind of contingencies that come along with that. That's really kind of great to hear that you guys have targeted that so aggressively. Maybe kind of on a secondary group, I'm wondering if you see many young clients, and do you think enough young people in Ireland are planning for their future?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. We don't see that many young clients, I'll be totally honest with you. And I don't probably think that they are doing enough, but there are so many challenges out there for them. I don't actually blame them. Like, it's very hard for them to plan for something, as far out as their retirement when they're struggling to find rental accommodation or struggling to buy a house, not to mention obviously the costs, the rising costs because of inflation.
Mhm.
I think there, again, if we can, and this isn't just like, again, so we were kind of saying about de-jargonizing things and breaking down the jargon. If we can simplify things and push the education piece out there for young people too, it won't be as intimidating for them. And it might, if they can understand it, because I know myself, even before I came into the financial planning world, I used to kind of go, well, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
And like, I'm not afraid to ask those questions. Some people are, and it makes them lose their vision. They just panic. And if we can break it down and help simplify that, that's absolutely brilliant. Now, the government actually only recently proposed a new pension auto enrollment scheme that is supposed to be rolled out in 2024. I do think that this will help younger workers. I think, look, there are plenty of aspects of the auto enrollment that still have to be ironed out. It's very much still in proposal stage, but I think anything that directs people to fund towards their retirement at a younger age is a positive. Now, I suppose to help people plan for their future, what I would suggest now, and like we always say this in the office as well, and it's not just for young people, it's for everybody because there's a million and one things going on in your head. Break down your priorities. Have a short-term bucket, a medium-term bucket, and a long-term bucket. So what I mean by that is a young person's short-term bucket might include building up an emergency fund that they have instant access to, or clearing any outstanding debts that they may have. Their medium-term bucket, which would be a 2 to 5 year horizon, could be looking to buy a house. Their long-term bucket might be like, okay, let me build a significant retirement pot. Once you have those priorities set, it kind of all becomes a little bit clearer of what you need to look at first. Now, I'm not saying don't contribute to a pension when you're young. If a young person is working for a company and their employer offers them a company pension scheme, we would absolutely always encourage everyone to take this opportunity, because especially if your employer is contributing, it's essentially like a free pay rise. But I suppose when we're having these conversations with younger people, it is, like Niamh said, a very expensive time in your life. There are plenty of things that they want to do. They might want to go traveling the world, weddings, house, whatever it is. We kind of say, put aside what you can absolutely afford, because once it goes into the pension, you can't break that in case of emergency. It is there until you have to retire the pot. So just start small, and you can always increase the contributions along the way. Like, starting small is better than not starting at all. And like we kind of said about the compounding interest, it just time, when you're a younger investor or a younger person, time is one of the most powerful tools that you can have. So I suppose, again, just to reiterate, if you start small, it's better than not starting at all. But don't overstretch yourself, because there are an awful lot of other expenses at that time in your life as well.
You touched there a bit on the macroeconomic conditions that we're experiencing at the minute, things like inflation and increased cost of living. I'm wondering, have you seen that increase maybe a feeling of apathy among young people? Like, have you seen a decline in young people being interested and maybe coming in to talk about their pension, or trying to start a financial plan, or preparing maybe to get a mortgage for a house?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think one thing that's great about young people is I do find young people of this generation know where to get answers to questions that they have. So, you look on any Reddit thread and people are saying, what's an NFT? How do I access the S&P 500? And all these questions that I just don't think were maybe being asked, or people didn't know where to ask them, 20, 30 years ago, and things like that. So I think that young people have a great way of saying, okay, I can't maybe do this. That the housing market is very pricey at the moment. Maybe I can't afford to buy a house in the next 5 years like I expected to be able to. What can I do instead? That's what we're finding people are asking. So people are coming to us and saying, look, I've built up maybe 10,000 in savings. I'm not going to be buying a house in the near future, let's face it. What'll I do with this money instead? So I think it's more about diversion of their plans rather than just completely eradicating them. I think we've obviously alluded to a lot already. You know, it is a very expensive time of your life. And I think a lot of people, young people in particular, haven't really seen inflation like we're seeing at the moment, and prices rising the way that they are rising. So it's definitely scary. And I think goals definitely need to adjust with it. But I do think, I will sing young people's praises and say that I do think it's a great thing that they're educating themselves. And like Lisa said, starting small is better than not starting at all. So diverting money to certain savings plans is a great way of adjusting your plan based on your changing goals.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess kind of on that idea of young people and maybe getting ready, maybe for retirement or your mortgage or something, because here at MyWallSt, we're like specifically focused on stocks and participating in the stock market. I thought I would ask a bit of a selfish question, which is, so I grew up in America, so we're very used to talking about things like 401ks and Roth IRAs, which for those of you that don't know are like tax incentivized accounts to encourage people to begin investing and preparing for retirement at a very young age. You can pay way less taxes on growth and stuff like that. And so I was wondering, are there any equivalent accounts in Ireland that you think young investors should be taking advantage of?
You're going to be sick of me talking about retirement and pensions for the end of this, but that's exactly where I'm going with it.
Don't worry.
Yeah, so like a pension, I suppose, is, you know, as we all know, is one of the most tax efficient vehicles that you can have. And I suppose, you know, it's becoming more and more important because we're all living longer on average, which means that we need more income to live off. And the state pension, look, it's less than 13,000 a year at the moment, so it's obviously not very much to get by on. I suppose one of the reasons that the pension is the most tax efficient vehicle is because you can get tax relief on the contributions going into the pension. It grows tax free, and then you may be able to get a tax free lump sum when you retire it up to certain limits. Now, it's all well and good me saying that you get tax relief in the pension contributions, but I know, like, from speaking to a lot of people, they kind of go, yeah, but what does that actually mean? So I suppose, let's say, just take for example €100, just to use easy figures. If you pay €100 into your pension and you're on the higher rate of income tax, you will receive tax relief of €40, meaning that it's actually only going to cost you 60. So €100 gets invested, but you will only see a difference of €60 off your pay slip. And it's similar if you're on the lower rate of income tax, it's 20%. So it'll actually essentially only cost you €80, but the full €100 is getting invested. So in a way, you can kind of think of it like you've already got a 20 or 40% return already, right?
Yeah.
I suppose another, like I said, kind of just to reiterate, if you do start young, time is on your side. It's the most powerful tool that we can have to help kind of build up a significant pension pot without overstretching yourself too much. So we have pension projections calculator here, right? So I just wanted to really hammer home and emphasize, I suppose, the impacts that compounding interest can have on your pension pot. I've popped in a couple of, so the inputs were 40,000 salary, the salary growth rate was 1%, a return rate was 5%, and then we just said if the contributions increased in line with the salary of 1%. So if you started contributing €300 a month to the pension at age 25, and let's say you retire at age 68, you'd end up with a pot of around 338,000. Now, if you started this 10 years later at age 35, put in the same 300 a month, and again, retirement age of 68, you'd end up with a pot of 201,000. So that's a difference of 137,000 just by 10 years, by you not starting younger. So, and like you said, like if the longer you leave it, and if you have a goal or a certain pension pot in mind, you know, you will have to kind of, you'll feel the pinch a little bit more because you'll have to increase your contributions to get to that level. Whereas if you just start small, as we keep saying, it's better than not starting at all. It makes it a lot easier down the line for you to reach that goal.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's quite impressive, but you did just talk a little bit there about kind of Irish tax laws, the advantages of using the pension system. So kind of overall, would you say that Irish tax laws affect your recommendations, and do those kind of adjust over time as tax laws adjust over time?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, we're not tax advisors ourselves. So, what we do with a lot of our clients who do have maybe tax advisors, accountants, solicitors, etc., is we try and partner with them to make sure that the plan is suitable for that client, and we are availing of any tax reliefs that are available. Because look, there's not a whole lot of them in Ireland, so we might as well use the ones we have. So, like Lisa mentioned, the pension it would be the main one because you get your income tax relief on your contributions. Also, like Lisa mentioned, the contributions and the value of pension grows tax-free if there is growth in it, which we make sure there is. So, if you're investing personally in your own name, you might pay 33% capital gains tax or 41% exit tax. Whereas if that's growing in the pension, that's something that you don't have to pay. Now, for people that are investing personally, there is a capital gains tax allowance, which is a user lose it allowance that you get each year on gains that you make in investing in shares. And that's something a lot of people don't know, but you do actually have to sell out of your share to avail of that. So if you're working with an accountant, we try and make sure that people are availing that where it's suitable. And then for higher net worth investors, we see a lot of them doing EWIS investments, which is another tax incentive, and it's not a pension one. So that's where you can invest in an Irish company. So it's absolutely brilliant for our economy here, and a great way of investing. And you get income tax relief on your contribution. So let's take someone who, is a 40% taxpayer and they might want to invest, 100,000. Look, we're talking big numbers here, but just for round figures. And then, that's 40,000 of tax relief they're going to get on their investment. So really only 60% of the capital is at risk in a way, if you want to look at it that way. So it's another great thing that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. Like I said, it's usually only suitable for higher net worth investors. But again, it's just about making sure that any advisors that clients do work with are speaking to each other so that we can maximize the tax reliefs that are available in certain situations.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've certainly taken away from this that I need to get a financial planner, apparently. Okay. All right. I have one last question for you. And this actually came to us from a listener. His name is Stephen Lynch. Stephen, thank you for the question. And he said, is there a way to open up, or maybe what is the best way to open up an investment portfolio in your kids' names?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we do actually come across this quite a lot. So there is the short answer. So you can set up what's called a bare trust savings account. So under the current rules, you can gift your child 3,000 per annum from each parent, right? Anything above that amount will be liable to gift tax at 33%. Mm-hmm. What's, I suppose, is really important for us to hammer home that under this kind of bare trust structure, the child, once they turn 18, will be the owner of the plan. So this means that if the child instructs the life company or the trustees of the fund to withdraw all their funds, they're within their right because they have the authority, they're the legal owner. So naturally, this makes a lot of parents uncomfortable with it. So because they're like, I do not want 60 grand or 100 grand or whatever, maybe sitting there and the child's able to run off and blow it all.
I certainly wouldn't have been responsible at age 18. No, that money was coming to me.
You'd have a great time interrailing though. If you had 100 grand, think of the time you'd have.
You'd be on the luxury train and everything. Like there's no way you'd be doing the backpacking thing.
No.
But so we kind of suggest sometimes, depending on what the parents want to use it for, right? A lot of parents kind of set up like an educational regular saver fund. So this kind of would help cover the costs of college if the child needs to move out and they pay for accommodation and stuff like that. The parents will be the legal owners. Now, they can gift it to the child in a lump sum at a later stage in life if they want to, but this would eat into their inheritance tax liability, which is a lifetime threshold. So under the current rules, a child can inherit 335,000 tax-free in their lifetime from their parents. So if they choose to give the lump sum, that would eat into that threshold. If they use it for educational costs and stuff like that, that's, it's not going to the child, it's not being gifted to the child, that's fine. But under the bare trust structure is the only way that you could, have it in the child's name, but just to be aware that the child becomes the legal owner at 18. And I know once we explain that to a lot of clients, some of them are okay with it. Some of them are like, absolutely not. I don't want to take that risk. So it's just something to be aware of when you are, and just figure out what exactly it is that you want the funds for. Now, like I said, you can still gift a child 3,000 per annum, you know, or anybody, you can gift anybody 3,000 per annum tax free, and that doesn't eat into the threshold. So it is still a great incentive to do, but it just makes it a little bit more tricky when you're investing it in one of these kind of trust structures.
Mm-hmm. With the bear accounts, do you sometimes see people who have toddlers trying to determine how responsible their toddler will be when they turn 18 to determine, is it an appropriate account?
Yeah. Everybody's own kids are saints, aren't they? So they would they never do that.
You'd be like, they'll be responsible, don't worry. Yeah. Okay. That's great. Well, Niamh and Lisa, I would want to thank you for coming on FML. Thank you for answering all of our questions. Thank you for reiterating the importance of pensions. And you are welcome back anytime if you want to talk about pensions some more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.